Calling for a vote of no confidence. This is who we got rid of. Damn, bruh. Damiris Dantas hasn't played since 7/17 and was getting DMPs since 7/18. They knew this happened at least 2 weeks ago and refused to report it due to backlash. The trade deadline happened 3 days ago and the Fever made no attempt.
That is the part Indiana cannot explain away with a generic injury update. If this injury was known before the trade deadline, why did the Fever enter the most important stretch of their season without securing another dependable frontcourt option?
Damiris Dantas has a torn meniscus in her left knee. She underwent knee surgery yesterday and will miss the remainder of the 2026 WNBA season. Let's hear what Stephanie...
The official news is straightforward. Damiris Dantas has a torn meniscus in her left knee, underwent surgery, and will miss the remainder of the 2026 WNBA season. The uncomfortable part is everything surrounding that announcement. There was no dramatic moment during a game, no obvious collision that immediately sent her to the locker room, and no public timeline explaining when the injury first occurred. She simply disappeared from the rotation, accumulated absences, and then suddenly the season-ending surgery announcement arrived. That creates a bigger story than one injured reserve player. Indiana is chasing wins with a roster already under pressure, Aaliyah Boston carrying major responsibility inside, and the front office operating with very little margin for error. Dantas was not having a spectacular season, but losing another experienced big still changes the options available to Stephanie White. And later, we need to examine the decision that looks much worse now: why Indiana allowed another frontcourt player to leave before this situation became public.
Locker room. I mean, we'll miss her. She's a connector, and her personality, and she's a great communicator. She's a vet. We'll miss her ability to stretch the floor on the floor. She can.
Stephanie White immediately emphasized what Dantas brings as a veteran: communicator, connector, and floor spacer. That answer matters because it reveals how the Fever internally valued her. They were not only judging Dantas through box score production, they believed she stabilized the locker room, understood professional habits, and could offer a different offensive look from the front court. There is nothing unreasonable about respecting those traits. Every team needs veterans who communicate, hold teammates accountable, and understand how to survive difficult stretches. The question is whether Indiana valued those intangible qualities so heavily that it ignored the basketball warning signs. A roster spot is still a roster spot. If a veteran is retained partly for leadership, the team also needs enough healthy, productive depth around her to survive when circumstances change. And circumstances have changed quickly. A connector cannot connect the lineup from rehabilitation. A stretch big cannot create spacing while unavailable. Indiana is now forced to solve a basketball problem using a roster that was built partly around qualities that no longer help them on game night.
Because it wasn't reported to us, which is odd. A lot of these injuries never really get reported to us. Let's just go back to last year. Caitlin Clark's recovery. The ankle injury. She had a high ankle sprain. She talked about it in her end of the season interview. We didn't even know about it until Scott Agnes spilled the beans about it. And now that there's no...
This is where frustration with the reporting begins. The host compares the silence around Dantas to Caitlin Clark's high ankle sprain from the previous season, an injury he says was not fully understood publicly until reporter Scott Agnes discussed it later. That comparison does not prove Indiana intentionally concealed anything. Teams are often cautious with medical information, players have privacy rights, and recovery timelines can change. But there is a legitimate transparency question. Fans do not need private medical records. They do need accurate availability information when a player vanishes from the lineup for an extended period. When a team says very little, speculation fills the empty space. Was the injury recent? Was it aggravated during rehabilitation? Did the staff initially believe rest would solve it? Was surgery always likely? Those are basic competitive questions, especially around the trade deadline. The longer a team stays vague, the more every later decision gets examined with suspicion. Silence may protect short-term flexibility, but it can damage long-term credibility.
Yeah, I think the first part of the process is just rehab to see if you can minimize symptoms and get stronger and eliminate or some of the effects. And when you go through rehab and you don't get the desired effects, then you take the next step. And the next step was the surgery consult.
White's explanation provides the clearest available timeline. The first approach was rehabilitation. Reduce the symptoms, build strength, and see whether Dantas could improve without surgery. When that process did not produce the desired result, the next step became a surgical consultation, followed by the operation. That is a medically normal progression. Many knee issues are treated conservatively before surgery becomes necessary. So the existence of a delay is not automatically scandalous. The real basketball question is when Indiana understood that Dantas might not return soon. There is a major difference between believing a player is day-to-day and knowing there is a serious possibility she could miss the rest of the year. That distinction matters because front offices do not need absolute certainty to prepare. Good roster management is about planning for probabilities. If there was meaningful concern before the deadline, Indiana needed insurance. Even if doctors were still evaluating the knee, management should have asked a simple question: what happens if rehabilitation fails? Apparently the answer is what fans are seeing now. The Fever become thinner, Boston becomes more important, and every questionable front court decision from earlier in the season gets dragged back into the spotlight.
But the good thing is that we have Justine Passat. The good thing is Dantas is out. We can just throw Justine Passat right into the lineup. Wait, what do you mean? Wait, what do you mean we don't have? Oh, that's right. We let Justine Passat walk for no reason. That's a good point. That is a good point. Oh well, at least when we let her walk, we picked up a quality small ball 5, a stretch 4. At least we did that. Wait, we picked up Bree Hall instead. Oh, that's right. We did pick up Bree Hall instead.
And this is the decision that transformed an unfortunate injury into a front office controversy. Indiana previously moved on from Juste Juste's former front court comparison in the host's framing, specifically Juste Pasa, while keeping Dantas and adding Rebecca Gardner-style roster alternatives instead of preserving another natural small ball center or stretch option. The names are sometimes pronounced unclearly in the source audio, but the criticism is obvious. Indiana had a player who could have provided emergency front court depth let her walk, and now has no simple replacement. This does not mean the released player would have rescued the season. Fans often romanticize departed role players once injuries hit. A player outside the rotation can suddenly become an imaginary solution to every problem. But roster construction must be judged by redundancy. Contending teams usually protect themselves at premium positions. Indiana knew Boston was central to everything. They knew the league's schedule creates physical wear. They knew Dantas had age, mileage, and availability concerns. Still, the frontcourt depth remained fragile. Now one injury has exposed that fragility. That is not bad luck alone. Bad luck is the injury. Being unprepared for a foreseeable injury is management.
This is the reaction page. So the morons covering the Fever couldn't report this. Damn. It would be nice if the Fever still had Justine Passat. Oh, well, that would require a competent front office. We are wishing Dantas a speedy recovery. I wish the front office was honest.
The public reaction reflects that difference. Most fans are wishing Dantas a complete recovery, while simultaneously criticizing the front office. Those positions are not contradictory. You can respect the player, understand that injuries happen, and still question whether management responded responsibly. The anger is also amplified by timing. The trade deadline had already passed. Once that door closes, every available solution becomes more complicated. Indiana cannot simply identify a proven backup center and negotiate a normal deal. They may need to explore hardship mechanisms, short-term contracts, developmental options, or internal lineup experiments. Each path comes with limitations. That is why information matters before deadlines, not after them. A front office has access to far more medical information than the public. Nobody expects executives to announce every concern, but executives are expected to act on what they know. If Indiana suspected Dantas could be lost for months and still did nothing substantial, that deserves scrutiny. If they genuinely believed she was close to returning, then their medical projection failed. Either explanation raises questions, though they are different questions.
Since 7/17 and was getting DMPs since 7/18. They knew this happened at least 2 weeks ago and refused to report it due to backlash. The trade deadline happened 3 days ago and the Fever made no attempt.
The strongest accusation from fans is that Indiana knew about the seriousness of the situation for at least 2 weeks and avoided discussing it because the roster decisions would look worse. That claim has not been verified. The available evidence shows Dantas had not played since mid-July and was receiving did-not-play designations. But absence alone does not establish a cover-up. Still, this is where perception becomes dangerous for an organization. When official communication is sparse, fans begin constructing timelines from box scores, practice footage, travel photos, and reporter comments. Every missing detail becomes evidence in somebody's theory. The Fever could reduce that distrust with clearer injury designations and more direct updates. A team does not need to reveal sensitive medical specifics. It can say a player is dealing with a knee issue, has begun rehabilitation, and is being evaluated for additional treatment. That alone would establish a timeline. Instead, the public received the conclusion after weeks of uncertainty. By then, the argument was no longer only about Dantas. It became an argument about whether anyone covering the team was willing or able to ask uncomfortable questions.
They still haven't even come out and told us that AB had a torn meniscus. That's what they still didn't tell us that. That's the little thing that Scott Agnes leaked through the grapevine. Another reason why they canned his ass, because he's actually letting us know. But they still haven't actually said those words come out their mouth. And you know why I don't blame?
That criticism extends to local reporters. The host argues that previous reporting surfaced injuries and details the team had not publicly emphasized, while the current coverage has been less aggressive. That is a serious charge, and it deserves balance. Beat reporters work inside complicated access relationships. They need players, coaches, and executives to speak with them throughout the season. They also cannot publish rumors as fact simply because fans demand immediate answers. But access journalism becomes a problem when maintaining relationships appears more important than obtaining basic information. The job is not to protect the franchise from awkward questions. The job is to ask when a player was injured, whether the injury occurred during a game or practice, when surgery became likely, and whether the front office considered a replacement before the deadline. Those questions are not hostile. They are normal. A strong reporter can ask them respectfully, while still protecting private details. And if the team refuses to answer, that refusal itself becomes useful information for the audience.
Tony, at least being a good sport, deserved, but I've been on vacation for a week plus. Now, taking vacation in the middle of the WNBA season, that's interesting to me. That seems like taking vacation in the middle of holiday season, in the middle of Thanksgiving season. If you work retail, you don't really do it then. But okay. I mean, it's not like we've seen like Woj or Shams or Adam Schefter. I mean, we've never really seen.
The commentary about reporters taking vacation is partly humor, but underneath it is a real expectation created by the Fever's current relevance. Indiana is no longer operating like a quiet, small-market team that can release news with minimal attention. Caitlin Clark changed the level of scrutiny surrounding the franchise. Every injury, lineup choice, transaction, and coaching decision now travels nationally. That attention creates opportunity and pressure. Local reporters can become major sources for a national audience. The franchise can build trust by communicating professionally. Players can control false narratives by providing basic clarity. But when everyone treats information casually, the gap between the team's visibility and its media operation becomes obvious. The Fever are functioning inside one of the loudest ecosystems in women's sports. Their communication structure still sometimes feels built for a much smaller audience. That mismatch makes every delayed announcement look more suspicious than it might actually be.
When did this again, what do you guys do in practice? Now, shout out to the Pope, because he talked to the Vanderbilt player. And what did the Vanderbilt player say? Stephanie White runs us ragged in practice. Stephanie White we worked harder in practices than we did in the game in the middle of the season. Not gearing up for the season to get in shape. In the middle of the season, practice made games seem like.
Now we reach the most provocative angle. The possibility that Indiana's practice intensity is contributing to the pattern of injuries. The source references a former player's description of Stephanie White's practices as extremely demanding, even suggesting that practices could feel harder than games during the middle of the season. That does not prove Dantas tore her meniscus in practice. The exact cause has not been publicly established in the transcript. Meniscus injuries can develop through contact, twisting, accumulated wear, or a specific movement that is not dramatic enough to become obvious on video. It would be irresponsible to blame the coaching staff without evidence. But workload deserves examination. WNBA seasons compress travel, games, recovery, and practice into a demanding calendar. Coaches must balance preparation with preservation. A team can benefit from physical practices early in the year, especially when building habits. The equation changes once players are carrying fatigue, soreness, and existing injuries. If multiple players are becoming unavailable outside visible game incidents, the staff should review everything: practice duration, contact level, recovery days, individual workload, strength management, and whether injured players are being asked to do too much too soon. That is not an accusation. It is basic performance management.
Like walkthroughs. Wow. A lot of injuries seem to be happening in practice. Like last year, Caitlin Clark's quad just came in practice. Oh man, it sure is interesting. It sure is interesting. Lexi Holt too, like randomly Lexi Holt to start off the preseason unavailable.
The host points to other examples. Caitlin Clark reportedly dealing with a quad issue in practice, Lexi Hall entering preseason unavailable, and other unexplained physical setbacks. Individually, none of those incidents proves a pattern. Across an entire season, however, repeated uncertainty creates a pattern of questions. The Fever must distinguish between unavoidable injuries and controllable risk. Basketball is physical. Players land on feet, absorb contact, twist knees, and accumulate soreness. No training staff can eliminate that. What a team can control is how quickly it recognizes problems, how clearly it communicates internally, and how intelligently it adjusts workloads. This matters even more with Clark. Her value is not limited to Indiana's win total. She drives ticket demand, television audiences, merchandise, and national attention. Protecting her health is a competitive and business priority. The same principle applies to Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, Hull, and every rotation player. A roster built around a few essential pieces cannot survive careless load management. The public may never know whether practice played any role in Dantas' injury, but the organization should know, and it should be investigating that question honestly.
Yo, Stephanie, have you been watching her play this year? And I wish Damaris Dantas a speedy, healthy recovery. Speedy, healthy recovery. But have you seen her shoot this year? You know she doesn't. The only thing Damaris Dantas stretches on the floor is like when she's getting ready before games, and she does stretches on the floor. That's the only thing. Again, wish her a speedy recovery. But damn, have you been watching these games?
There is another layer to White's comments. She praised Dantas' ability to stretch the floor, while the host mocked that description because Dantas had not been shooting effectively. The criticism is harsh, but it exposes a tactical issue. A player's theoretical skill is not the same as current production. Defenses only respect spacing when the shooter is willing, available, and accurate enough to punish them. If Dantas was struggling from outside, opponents could still crowd driving lanes and help toward Boston. Indiana may have viewed her as a stretch option based on career reputation, while fans judged what they were seeing this season. That gap matters in roster decisions. Front offices sometimes remain attached to the version of a player they expected rather than the version currently on the court. Experience, reputation, and past percentages can delay difficult choices. Meanwhile, a younger or less established player who offers energy, rebounding, or defensive versatility may lose the roster battle because her value feels less predictable. The Dantas injury now forces Indiana to confront reality. They no longer have the luxury of theoretical fit. They need actual minutes from actual available players.
Damaris Dantas a speedy recovery. It almost begs the question, what do they do with Damaris Dantas in practice? Because remember last year, she had a random concussion that kept her out for an extent. Like, wait, when did you get a concussion? You know, when did you got one in practice? I guess so. And now she's not with the team, Wait, where has Damaris Dantas been at? Oh, she has a meniscus that nobody told us about. Oh, that's interesting.
The strange part is how little the public knows about the moment of injury. The host mentions a previous concussion and asks what keeps happening in practice. Again, that framing is speculative, but it captures the confusion. Fans usually understand injuries when they see the play. A knee bends awkwardly, a player steps on another foot, or contact sends someone down. With Dantas, there is no shared visual explanation. That absence creates emotional distance from the injury itself and redirects anger toward the organization. Instead of discussing the play, people discuss secrecy. Instead of analyzing recovery, they analyze roster failures. Instead of simply supporting Dantas, they debate whether the Fever mishandled the entire situation. Indiana could have prevented some of that by communicating sooner. Even a limited update would have kept the conversation grounded. Once people feel information was withheld, every neutral fact gets interpreted negatively. And that brings us to the real payoff in this story. The biggest failure may not be releasing one reserve, missing one trade, or giving one vague injury report. It is that Indiana appears to be reacting instead of anticipating.
It's probably been happened, but you all have reporters scared to report basic information. Free Scott Agnes. Free Scott. We didn't realize how good we had it. We didn't realize how good we had it with Christie. We didn't realize how good we had it with Katie Lou Samuelson. We didn't realize how good we had it with Scott Agnes either. Damn. Be careful what you wish for. It stands true today.
The call to free Scott Agnes is exaggerated for entertainment, but it represents nostalgia for reporting that fans believed gave them information the franchise would not. When supporters start treating independent reporting as a rescue mission, it signals a trust problem. Trust affects more than public relations. It shapes how every future decision is received. Suppose Indiana signs a developmental big, fans may assume it is a desperate move. Suppose White reduces practice intensity. People may interpret that as an admission. Suppose the team says another player is day-to-day. Supporters may immediately expect a season-ending announcement 2 weeks later. Once credibility weakens, even honest updates are doubted. Rebuilding that credibility requires consistency. Give meaningful injury designations. Explain roster logic without insulting the audience. Allow reporters to ask follow-up questions. Admit uncertainty when uncertainty exists. We are evaluating her response to rehabilitation is better than pretending nothing is happening. The Fever do not need to reveal everything. They need to stop making basic information feel like a leak.
You know she had to say first thing we'll miss her in the locker room? Because the reason they gave the fans for letting Justine Passat walk and keeping Damaris Dantas is not because of her play. Not because of what she contributed on the court, because she's a glue. Her locker room presence. She's important to the culture. She's necessary for the team. Well, that went out the window. But Stephanie White has to double down on that.
The earlier decision to keep Dantas was publicly defended through culture, communication, and locker room value. That explanation now carries consequences. If culture was the justification, Indiana must show that the basketball roster was still protected. Leadership cannot become a substitute for depth. This is where front office evaluation must be ruthless. Every player can bring something positive. One may be a great teammate, another may understand defensive coverages, another may mentor younger players. Those qualities matter, but championship-level roster building asks a second question. What happens when the starter gets hurt? Indiana's answer at center and power forward was never convincing enough. Boston could play heavy minutes, Dantas could provide experience, and smaller lineups could cover the rest. That plan depended on health. Once Dantas went down, there was no sturdy second layer. The most successful teams do not wait for emergencies to discover their weaknesses. They identify them in May, test them in June, and address them before deadlines. Indiana instead arrived at August with supporters naming released players as the best available solution.
You could have kept Justine in the first place. Tough injury and sucks. Yep, I suppose that's better than undergoing unsuccessful. Fair enough.
You could have kept Juste in the first place has become the simplest version of the criticism. It is emotionally satisfying because it identifies one decision and one alternative. Reality is more complicated. Keeping that player might have required sacrificing another roster priority. She may not have earned White's trust. She may not have been ready for a major role. Her own health and consistency could have created different problems. But the front office cannot hide behind complexity forever. Its job is to make difficult choices before the outcome is known. When those choices fail, management has to own the result. Indiana chose its depth structure. Indiana chose which veterans to prioritize. Indiana chose not to make a significant front-court move before the deadline. Dantas's torn meniscus did not force those earlier decisions. It exposed them. That is the distinction the organization must confront. An injury can be unpredictable. A thin roster is visible on paper.
Knock down a shot, she can give us a different look from that position as well.
Will she not be with you guys at all the rest of the way?
I'm not sure. I think it'll probably depend on what her recovery looks like.
What was the process in, I know you guys said it was precautionary last Wednesday against Connecticut and you guys on the road trip.
Yep.
Just what was the process of getting that testing?
Yeah, I think the first part of the process is just rehab to see if you can.
White also acknowledged uncertainty about whether Dantas would remain around the team during recovery. That may depend on rehabilitation logistics, travel, medical appointments, and what is best for the player. Her presence could still matter. If Indiana truly views her as a connector, she can contribute in film sessions, practices, and conversations even while unable to play. But that contribution should not distract from the competitive issue. The Fever needs someone who can absorb physical minutes, rebound, defend screening actions, and prevent Boston from carrying an unsustainable burden. Leadership from the sideline cannot box out an opposing center. The next move will reveal how seriously Indiana views the problem. They can search for an available veteran. They can elevate a developmental player. They can play smaller and increase the workload on wings. They can use more Boston-centered lineups and accept the risk. None of those choices is perfect, which is exactly why waiting until after the deadline was so costly. Every solution now involves compromise.
Wait, when did Lexi Holgan? Yeah, that sure is interesting. Justine Passat, they told us Justine Passat had leg issues in preseason, remember? Remember Justine Passat had some type of, and what does Justine say? Oh, don't trust the media. It's like, wait, when did that happen though? Because that sure is interesting. It sure is interesting. Back brace here, back brace there.
The references to preseason leg issues, back braces, and distrust of the media create a dramatic closing image. But the responsible conclusion is narrower. There is not enough confirmed evidence to declare that Indiana's practices caused these injuries or that reporters knowingly participated in a cover-up. Those allegations remain unverified. What is verified is damaging enough. Dantas is out for the season after knee surgery. Her absence was not clearly explained for an extended period. The Fever's frontcourt depth is weaker than it should be. The deadline passed without an obvious replacement, and the organization's communication left room for suspicion to overpower the facts. That combination is why this story matters. It is not merely about the minutes Dantas was playing. It is about how serious teams manage risk. Indiana wants to compete now, not 3 years from now. They have Clark creating championship expectations faster than the franchise infrastructure appears ready to handle. That means every roster spot, injury update, and depth decision receives playoff-level scrutiny. The Fever can still survive this, Boston is talented enough to anchor the interior. Their guards can create offense. Smaller lineups may produce speed and spacing. A low-cost addition could become useful. But surviving a mistake does not erase the mistake. So now the choice belongs to you. Is this mainly an unlucky injury that fans are turning into a conspiracy? Or did Indiana's front office fail to prepare for a problem it had time to see coming? Leave your answer in the comments, like the video, and subscribe for the next update.